And we are pleased to be back after that short break with our first guest. Our first guest is Yanga Sibembe, a sports journalist at the Daily Maverick. Please, listener, don't forget that you can join the conversation here at Salam Media by contacting us on our studio line 011-680-0355. You can reach us on WhatsApp at 061-766-0355. Of course, our handle on X is at Salam Media. You can tweet at us using the hashtag Ramadan 2026 SM. We're streaming live on Facebook, facebook.com/Salam Media, and of course on the website, salammedia.com/listen-live. Good morning, Yanga. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Yanga, let's get straight into it. One of the big stories to emerge, I guess, over the last few weeks with the geopolitical crisis, and I guess we would call it more openly a war happening out there in West Asia and in the Gulf, is the very real possibility that Iran may not seek to appear at the 2026 FIFA World Cup due to be held in the USA, Mexico, and Canada. Can you tell us more about that and the latest updates?
Yeah. I think it's quite an uncertain time at the moment. Because of course, as you said, there's bigger things for Iran to worry about than playing a football tournament, especially when it's being played in a country, and especially for them, their matches are in a country that is part of this attack on them. So it's quite an uncertain time for Iran, for the tournament itself as well. There's a lot of uncertainty of what it will look like without one of the teams possibly playing there. So yeah, it's a tricky situation. I think it's a big headache for FIFA. But yeah, at the moment, what they've said is that they everything is proceeding as planned because Iran had said that they've written or they're in communication with FIFA with the hopes of moving their matches to Mexico, possibly one of the co-hosts of the tournament. But in an update yesterday, FIFA said that as things stand, everything is going according to what they've scheduled, what they've planned. And yeah, it's quite a tricky situation. We saw it in the T20 World Cup with Pakistan, and then of course Bangladesh is pulling out of the tournament initially before Pakistan were able to play their match after boycotting their match against India. But Bangladesh removed them from the tournament, and the cricket body in the world had to sort of find a last minute replacement. It's going to be tricky for FIFA. It's very tricky. But I think the most practical situation right now is that they look to move the matches, especially because it's been said in the US they can't guarantee the safety of the Iranian team if it goes to the US. So it's a very volatile situation, I'd say. But I'm sure in the next couple of weeks or on the next month or so, there should be some more clarity on what the plan is.
Yeah, thank you, Yanga. I mean, yes, we've seen that the president of the Iran Football Federation, of course, has said that they're in talks with FIFA, as you say, to move their matches to Mexico. Mexico's president Claudia Sheinbaum has also stated that Mexico would be happy to accommodate Iran's request by hosting their matches over there in Mexico. But this World Cup has been so far quite controversial in many ways, beyond just the participation of Iran. There's also been these question marks about what will be the role of the US's immigration and customs enforcement, with relation to fans, possibly even to players or to coaching staff of the teams. But another really important angle, of course, is that this is the first World Cup that South Africa has qualified for since 2010, when it qualified, obviously, as hosts, and the World Cup was held over here. Um, Given all the controversies around the World Cup and the current political tensions between South Africa and the US, how do you think South Africa should be approaching this, given the kind of precedent that Iran have set?
Yes. I think you touched on it now. Even at the World Cup pro ceremony in December, Iran spoke about struggle of getting visas just to attend the draw ceremony. So besides South Africa, there's a few other countries that are participating, such as Senegal, that are on the US's banned list, where their citizens are not allowed to get visas to the US. So it's going to be an interesting time, and especially as the tournament gets closer and closer, because I think for now FIFA sort of just turned a blind eye and looked to the other side, and just sort of pretended that as if everything is going as like everything is normal basically. But from a South African perspective, I do not foresee any problems, because in the last month or so, uh, people from SAFA, delegations from SAFA have been traveling in and out of the US. So I do not foresee them having any issues, because they're of course not on that list that I mentioned of countries that are banned from entering the US. But anything can change in the next couple of weeks. We've seen how with Donald Trump at the helm in the US, things just sort of flip like a coin, instantly. So at this point, preparations are going strong for South Africa. There's a lot of excitement to participate in their first World Cup after 16 years. And yeah, I think they don't have any issues. Fortunately for them as well, most of their matches, two of them, I think, in the group stages are going to be in Mexico. So I don't think they'll have too many issues with that. That they just have one match in the US, and hopefully, of course, if they qualify then for the knockout, uh, we shall see where they will be placed.
Yes, I mean, I'm glad to hear that from a logistical perspective, your prognosis is that things should go smoothly. But of course, besides the prospect of Iran not going to the World Cup, there have been other threats of boycotts made throughout this, last qualifying period. One of the most notable ones, for example, was Spain's threat to boycott the tournament should Israel qualify. Now, luckily, Italy did Spain and the rest of the world a huge favor by forcing Israel instead to boycott the World Cup by beating them and not allowing them to qualify. Um, but um, but given that there is serious talk about boycotts in this way, I mean, uh, is this something that you would endorse? I mean, the South African Minister of Art, Sports and Culture, Gayton McKenzie, says, of course, no, the FIFA World Cup is a celebration of the global game. But, South Africa itself was boycotted from attending the World Cup in the past during the days of apartheid. So it clearly has this political significance.
I think in the past, I mean, even heading into Qatar, there was a lot of talk about nations threatening to boycott the tournament because of alleged human rights abuses in Qatar. But when push it came to shove, then people just participated. So I think it's always the case heading into a World Cup. Even when we had our own World Cup here in 2010, Western countries were saying concerns about their safety. South Africa is a crime-ridden country. It's not safe, and let's not go there. But eventually, they came there at a great time, and it's considered one of the best World Cups in history. So that was always the case. This talk is always there before a tournament that there's going to be a boycott. But I think in recent times, in recent decades, there hasn't been a follow through in terms of football itself. Like I said, there's an example of Bangladesh pulling out of the T20 World Cup recently. So yeah, it does send a strong message. It says that you're standing up for principles and you're standing up for what's right. But also, on the other hand, as the minister said, the players that are there, for them it's a dream to play at on such a big stage. It could be a life changing opportunity for them and their families if they perform well and then they earn a bigger move to another team or wherever. So there's also stuff like that to consider. But of course, some things are just bigger than an individual or individuals. So yeah, I personally I say because as you say they've worked in the past and they've sent a strong message. But yeah, I think generally even if you do boycott, life goes on. And yeah, I think it's usually just grandstanding at those points if you're not actively doing anything outside of just saying I'm on boycott.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think it was very interesting as well that, there were all these different threats of boycotting the Qatar World Cup. And in fact, even at the World Cup, there were all these really bizarre political stunts that certain teams tried to play. Like, for example, with the German players posing with their hands covering their mouths, and, Denmark creating a special kit to protest. But I mean, there wasn't that hysteria in 2018 when the World Cup was held in Russia, who,
Yes.
also have very similar, problematic policies as what Qatar was claimed to have at the time. And so, I mean, that's in and of itself a very interesting thing to point out, that the outcry against countries hosting the World Cup seems to vary depending on who the country is.
Mm-hmm.
But it remains to be seen. I mean, what happens with this World Cup in the US? I think it seems that there's a particularly unprecedented kind of confluence of really bizarre circumstances and ethical questions to be raised. But thank you so much for joining us, Yanga, this morning. It's been a pleasure to have you, and wonderful to chat football with you. And hopefully, at some point, we'll have a chat about big successes for South Africa.
Let's keep our fingers crossed. And thank you for having me. And like you said, this World Cup, yeah, of course, there's the element of the fact that it's an extended World Cup. There's never been a World Cup with 48 teams. So there was a lot of excitement around that from FIFA's side. But I think what's happening off the field has taken sort of that excitement and sort of drained it. So it's gonna be, as it gets closer, and if this uncertainty is still lingering, it will be interesting to see how FIFA handles it. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again. That was Yanga Sibembe, sports journalist at the Daily Maverick. We will again be back with another guest and an equally important, interesting topic after this short break with the messages from our sponsors.